because you have to have a plan. You have to have a very clear focus, a lot of determination, and a very clear strategy that focuses on impact and outcomes. And that's what we'll be talking to the city about in about a month.
Good. Michael, I want to turn to you and talk about the United Way. Judy raised the issue of race, and it is the issue of race that actually makes the issue of equity so important, because we are becoming a nation in which the majority will be people of color by 2044. Already in this nation, the majority of babies have been of color since the summer of 2012. By 2030, the majority of the workforce will be of color. And that is going to be a wonderful thing if we are able to identify and tap the assets. The assets that come with that are exactly what the nation needs, exactly what New Orleans needs. And this notion of equity says, let's look at who is being left behind and come up with strategies to make sure everybody can participate. As I run into United Ways across the country, for a while I was thinking United Way was going to miss the boat. Because here was the challenge for the nation, and the United Way was in every community, and yet the United Way seemed to have its head buried in the sand about the shifting demographics and the needs of the future. And then I met you. And I saw a blueprint for prosperity, and I said, well, here's an extraordinary leader of really understanding what the challenges are in the 21st century. Tell us about that, how it's going, and how you see this contributing to an equitable New Orleans.
Well, I'm just so glad that the cameras rolling, they got that on tape, Angela, because it is truly a compliment coming from you. So I think, it starts, you've heard a lot of conversation around data and the importance of talking to folks, and folks that have lived experience. And so we decided to stop for a moment as an organization, quit talking to ourselves, because while we might like the answer, because we usually agree with ourselves, we weren't getting the total community picture. And so we spent some time going out into the communities that we serve. 63 community conversations, over 700 individuals we talked to of various walks and background, talk about what the issues are that we're facing in the communities we serve. And we heard repeatedly issues around education, health, and economic opportunity, like our friends at the Kellogg Foundation. But in particular, we also heard issues around equity, race, specifically racism, sexism, and you pick the other isms that you want to add to that. We heard repeatedly that these were the lenses that we had to look at. How do we better serve our community? How do we address these bigger issues? And the overarching issue that we heard was, throughout the region we serve, is poverty. No matter which way you sliced it. If you lived uptown in the bubble, poverty affects you. If you lived in the lower line, the 7th Ward, if you lived in Macomb, no matter where you live in our region, that it was an issue that we face. And so we produced what Angela's referred to as our blueprint for prosperity. And we started out with the statement that we believe in equitable communities where all individuals, I'll go back to your mayor, or our mayor, for those of you visiting, equitable communities where all individuals are educated, healthy, and economically stable. And we think about the challenge that we can face. We believe all people need to have access to economic opportunity. But if you look at the data, it tells you a story. If you're an African-American male in Orleans Parish, the likelihood of being in jail or unemployed is extremely high. You can't argue with that. We've also taken a look at other issues that I think a lot of the ladies in the room would agree with us on. Equity in pay. If you want to tackle a single important issue around equity in Louisiana, or in Southern Louisiana, or in Orleans Parish, talk about equal pay for equal work for women. If you're a woman in this state, you're going to earn 67 cents on the dollar to your male counterpart. I can say this because I'm a guy. But if we begin to tackle the issues around pay equity as just one strategy that is sustainable, we can do it through policy and practice. Equal pay throughout the state of Louisiana would result in a 50% reduction in poverty among working women. And I would subject to you that you could see a reduction in overall poverty in 3 to 4% range. We did a report, we did a study. It's called the ALICE report. ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Yet Employed. I often joke it's also the name of my mother-in-law, whom I dearly love now. But one of the things we learned in that study, in particular in Orleans Parish, is that 24% of our families in Orleans Parish live in poverty based on how our federal government defines poverty. But what we often couldn't talk about in real terms is, what about the folks that live above the poverty level that are struggling every day and are not making ends meet? They're working a job, they have limited assets, their income is limited, but they're doing the right things, right? They're going to a job every day. It's another 25%. So that's telling us that there's almost 50% of the families that live in our region, in this particular parish, who struggle every day in poverty or aren't making ends meet, don't have what it takes to survive. That's a blatant indicator that we have an equity issue in our city, and it's something we have to systemically address, and we think that we can tackle it through very more effective policies and a great deal more advocacy.
And there are other United Ways that are coming to the same conclusion. Some of the staff at Policy Link attended a conference in San Francisco. The San Francisco United Way is stepping up in that same way. And when I think of the United Way, I think of business. How is business responding to this equity focus and this focus on poverty and those who are being left behind, and being explicit about the racial and the ethnic components of that?
I see Jason Williams sitting in front here, and I can't help but remember sitting in a Race and Equity Institute workshop where we talked about the journey that we've been on the past 300 years. And Jason pointed out, as we talked about this groundwater approach to issues around inequity and racism in our communities, that the data tells a story, and it's something that even conservative business people can understand. And I think that our business leaders that sit on our board, they think about measurement, they think about results and outcomes, and they want to know kind of what effect do our investments or policy changes actually have on the community, and what's the net positive of that. And I think we believe that this conversation around equity, and in particular the issue of poverty, we need to say the word. We don't need to hide from it. We need to talk about upward mobility or any of the kind of phraseology we want to use that really, I think, clouds the issue. It needs to be in our boardrooms. It needs to be in business boardrooms. It needs to be in United Way boardrooms. It needs to be in large nonprofit boardrooms where we have business leaders around the table to consistently talk about the issue and talk about how do you make a measurable difference so that it creates a better community for us all. And once again, going back to equal pay for equal women, I'm so hyped up about this because we had the first equal pay summit in the state of Louisiana about 11 days ago in Baton Rouge, hosted by the governor and first lady, where we talked about this issue. It's not just good for women, or those of us that are married to women that are working in the workplace, we'd like to see equal pay. It's also good for business and the effects on the gross domestic product. Just equal pay in the state of Louisiana will result in 3.1% GDP increase. I mean, to me, I don't care who you are, a business person, those numbers can appeal to you.
So Jade, I know that you have spent time in the corporate sector, in real estate, lawyer, a civic engagement advocate. What role do you think business and business orientation can play in terms of solving these problems? And while you have the mic, just to give you both questions at the same time, I'd love to hear about the Work Alone Cooperative that you've been working with, because it just is an exciting example, and I want everyone to know about it.
Yeah, so I'll actually start with the answer to the second question, and then I'll work back. But working along with Deputy Mayor Judy Reese-Morris, I worked along with a number of business leaders throughout the city and actually the region to put together or come up with a project that promoted racial reconciliation and equity. And so long story short, very long story short,
Some details.
I'll give you the details, I will. Very long story short, one of the conclusions that we came to, which Mayor Landry kind of alluded to earlier in his remarks, is that there are times in the city where we are at our best. And one of those, honestly, whether you like, love, or hate Mardi Gras, it is during Mardi Gras. You know, you also can look at Super Bowl. When the Saints won the Super Bowl, we all were on the same exact page, right? And so what this group came together and learned was that there was an opportunity in Mardi Gras to promote racial equity, racial reconciliation, all at the same time, by bringing Mardi Gras back to New Orleans. I don't know how many of you know this, but the throws that come off of floats throughout the Mardi Gras season, all of that comes from China. And not to ding China, but we own Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras belongs to us, and we are literally leasing it back to China. And so that group of business folks came together to create an entity, a business entity, that we hope will put forward a cooperative, a co-op, where the folks who are working the system, right, so you're promoting workforce development, the folks who are working for the company and creating these throws will own the company. If you are familiar with the Green Bay Packers, they are the only NFL team that are owned by the people of the city of Green Bay. And so we want to promote a model that looks very much like that. What we found, and I'm moving to your second, or your first question, what we found is that inequity is systemic, right? And so what it requires is, and my pastor's here somewhere, I don't know where he is, but he would often remind us that of Newton's law, which says that every action has an equal and opposite reaction, right? And so if inequity is systemic, then we need to have an equal and opposite reaction of equity. And that is what that welcome table circle is seeking to do. And I think Mayor Landry pointed out earlier that many of us confuse equality and equity, and I think some of us do, but I think many of us just don't really want to know the difference of it, because equity comes with a sacrifice, right? We have to acknowledge and accept the principle that we have to help even the least of these. And many of us don't want to make that sacrifice because we're so comfortable with where we are. And so I think from a business perspective, we have to take a step back and say, how can we help the least of us in the city of New Orleans? What strategies can we put in place? What plans and strategic plans can we put in place? What systems can we put in place? Because the very first thing that I said was that inequity is a system. It was built on systems and subsystems. And so promoting the principle of equity in New Orleans requires us to create a system. And so I think that is the role that I think businesses have to play, is being part of that system, whether it's education, whether it's fair housing, whether it's equity and pay for women, or for folks of color, workforce development. All of those are subsystems that will work towards building a system of equity.
And if I could just add to that, because Jade, you said it beautifully, it is looking at it from a systems perspective. And what we're trying to do with Equity New Orleans is to do that, and to this whole idea of sustainability, to make sure that the equity work that has been done during the Landrieu administration doesn't go away if a new mayor comes in and he or she decides, you know what, I think that something else is important. Of course, that person will have the opportunity and the privilege to do that, but equity is key to anything that any future administration is going to do. So looking at it system-wide, making sure that there is a foundation and a structure that builds equity into the DNA of government so that it becomes natural and basic to how government functions and operates, to speak to the inequities and those policies and laws that we all know existed and we know what they've caused, but it's difficult to address. Nobody wants to really look at it because it's really hard. Is somebody going to blame me? Do I have to give something up? It requires a thorough analysis of what is. We have to have the courage to be able to look at what has happened, address it as is, acknowledge it, and then we can begin to start to take on, well, what are the possible solutions? And so, since 2010, we have been doing the work. As I said, we didn't refer to it as our equity agenda, but we've been doing the work that really has spoken to opportunity gaps. And so trying to then figure out how do we close those gaps? Well, that is what we're talking about. And again, what is government's role and what is government's commitment to addressing those inequities, but to do it in a sustainable way. So whether it's making sure that employees and policymakers are well trained and well versed in equity practices and principles, whether or not we look at how we budget. how we allocate city resources with an equity lens, and not just an equity lens, with a racial equity lens, really taking on the issue of race and doing what the mayor has challenged us to do, not go around it, but to really go right to the heart of it, because when we do, and this is what Charlotte Parent talked about earlier on a previous panel when she talked about that comprehensive public health approach. If you look at something like a disease, and you look at the problems that it has caused, and you're trying to find a cure for that disease, you can't sugarcoat the disease. You can't pretend it's something else. You want to get to the root of it. You want to know what it is so that your smartest thinkers can begin to think about potential cures for that disease. So the disease is gone, and then we can move forward in a healthy way. And that's really what we are looking to do. I think that's what we have to do if we're going to really be able to move forward in a positive way.
And can I make one more thing out? I think, and I've heard several times on panels before, the two panels before this, you know, we want to make sure that everybody has a seat at the table. And I think we've gone that far so far, right? We have to go beyond that. I think we have to go beyond just making sure that everybody has a seat at the table. And I think that's where the welcome table and the work that the city has done helped me so much in building relationships with people that I would not necessarily build relationships with, because we can't just invite folks to the table. We have to ensure everyone that we invite to the table that they're not the meal, right? And I think, and it's the truth. I think, and I work with folks in the community who say, no, I don't want to talk to them, right? Because I don't want to do anything with equity. I don't want to deal with equity because, you know, it's all talk. We have to ensure people that they're not the meal, that they're coming to the table because their perspective, their experience is unique, and it is necessary to create that system of equity.
You want to say, Mike, before we close, because I'm going to wrap up after you speak.
No, I think that, I mean, first of all, there's some glaring obvious things about these panels. They were mostly women, which tells you I'm spot on around the power of women in our country, in our region. Angela touched a couple of times about unanimity here is different. Well, I'm not from New Orleans. I love it here, and I think a lot of things about New Orleans are different. But we often think about things around a call to action. So if you're not from New Orleans and you're from a different community and you want to talk about these issues, go talk to your local United Way. If their heads in the sand, pull it out and get them to the table. I suspect they're around the table somewhere. They're investing. I think you should engage and push. If you happen to be an entrepreneur and you're in our region of Southeast Louisiana, invite us to your table. We'll invite you to our table. But I think these issues, while they are complex, they're solvable. Issues around equity, I think, are solvable. And as history has proven, we can make a little bit of progress. But in a short period of time, I think we can make a great deal more progress. And thanks again.
Thank you. And I think there's no question that you've come to a place that is on the move. A place that is not running away from itself, but is building on its assets and determined to be its best self. These three panels have really inspired me, taking the notion of resilience and making it and owning it in this community. What does it mean in all of its forms? Not running away from the issues that are really the ugliest issues and the hardest to face, and that is the violence we do against each other. And rather than burying its head in the sand, New Orleans is taking that on and moving forward. And in here, ultimately, the question of equity and inclusion, this is a moral issue always. But with the shifting demographics, with the things that are happening in our cities, the equity agenda has become an economic and a democratic imperative. It is actually the superior growth model for the city, for the nation, for our regions. And so this is an exciting place. I hope those of you who are coming from out of town will take a lot back with you, and those of you who are in town, I hope you're feeling as proud as I am of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our equity panelists, Angela Blackwell, Jay Brown Russell, Michael Williamson, and Judy Reese Morse. And thank you to the audience for participating in this robust conversation with us today. Please help me welcome Acting CEO of the Idea Village, Emily Madero, who will offer closing remarks to the 2017 Civic Innovation Summit.
I just wanted to thank you all for city for hosting this tremendous event, and for the panelists all day. Really, NOE is a collaborative platform, and we are so grateful for all of your participation. When the Idea Village was founded about 16 years ago, we were founded really to transform our city through entrepreneurship. And we always think of jobs and revenue when we think of businesses and we think of entrepreneurs. But I think what we recognize is that more important than that economic development is that entrepreneurs are masterful problem solvers. And so what I would love to do is challenge the entrepreneurs in this room and the thought leaders in this room to continue to be engaged in this conversation and to actively participate in this dialogue. The city has set up a website, I think it's behind me, noew@nola.gov. As we all approach our city's tricentennial, I think we have an opportunity and a tremendous opportunity really to think about the challenges that the city faces, to all become engaged in the future of our city, and to embrace innovations that will really uplift and empower all of us. So please become engaged, stay engaged. There's keynotes across the hall. We'll be learning about many entrepreneurs coming to New Orleans from throughout the Delta region at 4:30, and I thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Emily. Let's give one more round of applause.